Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Dev Radio, where we talk to many of the brilliant minds around Microsoft about really the cool things they're doing, their journey, or sometimes just some of the amazing services on the Azure platform. Today, I have Arnab Banerjee, who he was with us for the happy hour, and it was funny because I said, "Hey, we have a lot of smart Azure Dev people. Let's talk an Azure Dev topic." And Arnab sent me an email. He said, mainframes to microservices to Azure. And I said, "Oh, I'm absolutely 100% on board." Welcome, Arnab. It's so good to see you again.
Hey, Sydney. Thanks for having me on the show. I think we had a great time in the happy hour. A lot of good content and demos from everybody. So yeah, happy to be here.
So I have to ask, and almost from a hosting perspective, get out the way. Once you said mainframes to microservices to Azure, I wonder what's the background behind that title, because to me that's just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so I kind of got my start in the transportation supply chain industry, right? So learn a lot about the intricacies of how a shipment gets delivered from point A to point B, and solving some interesting problems in that industry, like how do you schedule 50,000 shipments a day across a fleet of trucks and trailers, multiple delivery stops in a way that's efficient and cost effective. So, as part of supporting those systems, my official introduction to computing was with mainframe green screens. So, COBOL, CICS running on IBM ZOS systems. So that's the mainframe part of it. I've made a one-line change to a 20,000 line COBOL program and have it blow up in my face sometimes in production. We didn't know a lot about microservices back then, and then from there I transitioned to writing Java programs, and really, I'm saying like frameworkless or core Java
Yeah.
before some of the frameworks came along like struts, and then Spring happened and the Java world changed forever, right?
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna just say, yeah, I had a similar story. I came from working at a university where all the student information was on a mainframe, and then going to I was on the .NET team, and I got transitioned over to the LAMP stack team, and it got transitioned to the Java team. So yeah, it was a whole different world before all the frameworks came along. I
Oh
think you're
yeah.
absolutely right. The entire Java community was very much, oh, we don't need any frameworks; we could just write it all ourselves.
And then they couldn't do without Spring, right? So and then it was around that time, and then we started noodling around API first strategy, the idea of microservices, and containers, right? And then one fine day, about 5 years ago, I logged into the Azure portal for the very first time, and the rest, as they say, is history,
So for
right?
the benefit of our audience, I've heard microservices. I've actually never heard, and this might be for my benefit too. API first strategy. How did you go from Java to API first strategy? That one's new to me.
Yeah, so this was really, and I think API first strategy really also snaps well with microservices architecture, meaning that as an organization, regardless of the industry you're in, you do care about how quickly you can expose services, whether internally or externally. And APIs, and especially REST-based APIs, has kind of become that de facto standard, which everybody understands, right? If you can all talk the same language, it doesn't matter how your internal backend systems
Yeah.
are operating. And so that I think that standardization is really providing the right levels of unlocking innovation for industries, right? And that's where having APIs, a first-class suite of APIs for your organization, can be a competitive advantage.
So, you're there, API for strategy, building out your microservices, and you log on to the Azure portal. Uh, what was that like? Where did, this is a fascinating question to ask everybody. But which Azure service did you start with first?
I think I started. Well, first of all, I got to clicking around everywhere I could click. It was I like to say it's like a kid in a candy store, right? You want it all, and then whatever my permissions at that time would allow, I started spinning things up. I think I probably went with something like an app service,
Yeah,
which is also one of our favorite services that our customers use for web app deployments. And I was just blown away with what the cloud can do, right? Coming from the on-premise, and really, I've been in that unique spot, having seen that transition in computing from all the way from mainframes to writing core Java, like I said, without tools and tool sets, and how difficult it can be just to get from code to prod. And then in the cloud world kind of just flips everything around, and I was like, man, this is where I need to be. And that was where that whole love affair with the cloud started, and I couldn't be happier, to be part of that journey in Microsoft, helping customers every day.
so you're with Microsoft Education as a cloud solution architect. Um, you talk quite a bit about Azure services, how they enable lots of new scenarios, kind of inverse the paradigm for a lot of organizations. What is that like for you as a CSA now, especially in the education field where there's just so many interesting solutions out there, interesting challenges that are unique to that to I want to say industry, but to that entire world.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think our higher educational institutions and academic medical centers, and even a lot of the K-12 that we work with, they're in a unique position to really influence the future generation through the right technology and tool set. And I think the way we show up at Microsoft with a very wide array of capabilities that can help unlock innovation, whether it's in like learning management systems or back-end ERP or even the front-end CRM systems, right? And then all of the line of business applications that a university might have, um, and helping them think through that and understanding and helping them choose the right technology within the cloud is where I see a lot of the work being done. Because as you know, Sydney, when you log into that Azure portal and you see those 250 services, it can be a little intimidating as well as interesting, because you're trying to understand, how do I apply this to my use case?
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the work I think we do on the field is to help customers through that journey.
Well, I'll tell you, education is just such a interesting industry. A lot of people think, oh, schools K through 12, colleges, they must be so far behind technology wise. But what I find in my experience, a lot of times you walk into and half the district is behind, half the district is doing cutting edge stuff you would have never thought of. I remember a project I was on where they were still running student records on the mainframe, but the business school not only was doing SharePoint, but I remember um, they were replacing their physical data center. So they used Azure to ensure a complete continuity of services so that no one would know they were replacing their physical data center. At that time, there was no such thing as Azure Stack or Azure Arc, and
Yeah.
they did it all manually. And I'm just saying that's absolutely fascinating. So education is just one of those places where talking to our audience out there, it's just a fascinating place to be from a technology perspective. You can do some of the most challenging projects and some of the most exciting things. So um, I, I
Definitely.
don't know if you've had similar experiences or not, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And what's also interesting about education, which is different from the commercial side of the house, is education can be very different as you move from each institution to another. Meaning that Some might have a very centralized way of thinking, but more often than not, you have a lot of departments, and each department might have their own IT, right? So you also have a central IT. So when you're trying to rationalize technology adoption across a very decentralized institution, you have to think a little differently in terms of ensuring that the value is there for all of these different stakeholders, right? As opposed to a central IT in a large commercial organization, it's a
Yeah,
little more standardized. So
yeah.
that's another interesting challenge, I think, in the education space.
But and I think this will wrap things up today. But I'll tell you, and, um, one of the cool things about Azure is just it's the open cloud. Whatever programming stack, whatever language you bring on is going to
Yeah.
work. And I tell you, I ask you, in your experience, has that been beneficial to education customers where they have, like you said, many different schools, many different teams running entirely different stacks, but be able to unify on a single cloud platform? Has that been your experience?
Oh, no, no question. One of the things that our education customers also find amazing about when they look at Azure for the first time is Azure is not just for .NET devs or anything like that, right? It's completely agnostic of your development stack, whether you're running PHP, WordPress in Azure, Node, um, Python, bring your Ruby on Rails. We can and of course Java and .NET, but really we're providing the platform for your stack to be successful, and I think that's one of the revelations. And same thing with we're running more Linux workloads in Azure than Windows, right? So it's a fundamentally different mind shift and mindset, which I think a lot of customers appreciate.
Yeah, well, Arnab, it's going to be it's going to be hard to end this conversation, but I know we're wrapping up right now. In your journey, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned? I like to ask one last question. Moving from mainframes to microservices to Azure, moving from a completely locked step way of doing things to a more flexible way of doing things to almost the super flexible and open cloud. Like, what do you think is the most big important lesson and takeaway you've taken from this journey?
So there are many. If I had to pick one, I would say that now more than ever, it's important for all of us in technology to realize that the rate of innovation is faster than our own rate of learning. Meaning that you have to take it upon yourself to learn something new every day just to be able to keep up. And it's something I take seriously, and I try to learn maybe not even one or two or three new things every day. But I encourage all our customers as well. And even if you're not in a direct technology field, knowing things about how some of the systems and things that you interact with work is going to help you, and it's going to pay off dividends in the long run.
That is an incredible takeaway for everybody who's watching. Um, be a lifelong learner, continuous learning, evolve at the because the platform is rapidly evolving. So Arnab, thank you so much for coming on. For everybody who's watching, if you want to be a lifelong learner, subscribe to our channel, set up the notifications. We got tons of interesting videos out there. There's tons of content out there for you to learn on our channel. There's all sorts of great content on Microsoft Learn, on docs.microsoft.com. So there's lots of ways for you to continue your learning journey. So Arnab, thank you so much again for coming on.
Thanks, Sydney. It was a great conversation.
Agreed. All right. And we will see you all next time we're on Dev Radio.